make sure if you
Yes, ma'am, we are recording.
Okay, perfect. So welcome everybody this rainy morning in September. And the Don Ryan Center wanted to offer you some webinars, knowing that 2020 has been a bit of a doozy. And whatever we can do to support local business owners and entrepreneurs and businesses, that is what we're here for. And I'm a mentor with the Don Ryan Center. And so we planned this, I think, earlier in the summer. And I guess my focus today is to help everyone have more good days. And I'm going to start off with one of my favorite quotes. It's from Albert Einstein. And he says, "Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world." And one of the reasons I'm starting with this is because I was speaking with a colleague of mine last week that I've worked with for 15 years. And we were talking about how my work has evolved since I've known him. And I said, well, what do you think I'm up to? What do you think I'm really doing with people? And he said, Caprice, I think what you do is you unleash people's imaginative capacity. So that's kind of why I started with that quote. I love working with entrepreneurs and small business owners because I am kind of, I guess, a visionary pragmatist, and that I believe that entrepreneurs have the ability to change and heal the world. And I understand that people are they're born to create. We are creative beings. We're not consumers, we're creators. And so it is like my honor and pleasure to help people unleash their creative capacity. And as we're sitting here in September 2020, this is not a time to adapt to circumstances. So I'm not going to, as I shared with that quote, I'm not going to share a lot of knowledge today. What I'm going to do is help you tap into your inner wisdom so that you can imagine new possibilities for yourself and for your businesses. And it's not a time to adapt, it's a time to reinvent. As we reinvent our businesses, as we reinvent our communities, we will reinvent the world. You know, I keep hearing everyone go, well, we want a different normal, but we don't want what used to be normal. We want a new normal, but not one that people are feeding us coming from a place of fear. So I really believe that we can create a bright future. We can create the world that we want our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to live in, and we do it by unleashing our creativity and through heart-centered entrepreneurship. And that kind of reminds me of one of my heroes is, I don't know if any of you have heard of Buckminster Fuller, but he got to a point in his life where he was very lost, and he found himself drinking excessively. He went down to the ocean, and he was contemplating the end, even though he had a wife and a small child. And he got a message from the universe that changed his trajectory. And what he decided to live as, he decided his life was from that point forward going to be a great experiment. And he was going to see how much good, how much value he could bring into this world as just one single ordinary, he always said he was completely ordinary individual. And so I kind of challenge all of us today to say, how much good can we bring into this world? And how can we strengthen this world? Because I think it's going to be strengthened at the periphery, not at the center. And when I say periphery, I mean our local communities. So the more that we can strengthen our local communities and cooperate with each other, the better the world will get. And so I'm quite hopeful this morning. So I'm going to focus on having more good days. And how do you have more good days? And why is that important? When you are operating at your highest peak level, it affects everybody around you. And success and well-being are really two sides of the same coin. So if you as an entrepreneur or a business leader are working yourself to the bone, if you're just so focused on work, you're not allowing any time for play or for your friends and your family, you're just going to burn out. You're not going to be able to serve yourself or your community. So as you have more good days, your business will flourish. And how do you do that? you access more creative thinking, you see and seize opportunities as they present themselves, and you build stronger relationships with your current and your potential clients and customers. And so I really want to start with, why do I think creative thinking is so important? And so to do that, I'm going to share a little bit of my story, because I entered strategy consulting when I got hired out of Carnegie Mellon by a boutique strategy consulting firm. And their claim when they were recruiting me was, we charge more than McKinsey. That was like their claim to fame. And so the kind of strategy consulting I did with them, we mainly were working with the big Fortune 50 companies, and we were coming up with really, really elegant, complicated, sophisticated, quantitative solutions for their business problems. So we were buying massive servers to crunch all this data. We were doing, neural nets. So we were doing sophisticated statistical analysis. It was kind of like all this stuff I learned at Carnegie Mellon that I thought I would actually never use. I found myself using. The problem with that approach is, no matter how complicated, sophisticated, beautiful our solutions were, our clients weren't usually implementing our recommendations. So we would have these huge PowerPoint presentations, these, decks they're called in consulting, and they would just sit on the shelves. And they were expensive. They would pay us like $1 million for a 6-month project. So as I saw that, our clients weren't able to use that, and I thought, well, maybe the way to solve these business problems isn't just with analytic linear thinking. Maybe there's a different way. And so it kind of got me on this path that I have been on for the past 20 years of really understanding how humans create and thrive. So I'm going to share a metaphor for you that I think hopefully will be very helpful. I want you to think of the intellect that school is so focused on, the intellect that, they fill you with information, you do information processing, you do testing, that where we think, it's in our brain. That's kind of your hard drive. So for, those of us who are old like me, before the internet, your hard drive has a limited capacity. Just like Albert Einstein said, knowledge is limited. So if you want to go and run your business and, solve your business problems just using your intellect, it's like using that desktop hard drive, but you're saying, I'm not going to plug in to the internet. I'm just going to use whatever information is on this hard drive. And the problem with that approach is, most of our thinking is habitual, and it developed early in life, and most 70% they say is negative. So you're not going to find a lot of creative solutions by just sitting down at your desk and kind of crunching on a problem and trying to figure it out. Where do most good ideas come from? Most good ideas come in a flash of insight. When you talk to CEOs, they say, well, I was in the shower, I was walking my dog, I was driving to work. They weren't focused on the problem. They had maybe been considering it for some time, and then they had this flash of insight. So I'm going to offer you that comes from not your intellect, but your intelligence. And it's like taking yourself and plugging yourself into the internet. Now you're always plugged in to this universal intelligence. It's just that we forget who we are because we've been trained by school and by society to think that we are these limited beings. So this is why I recently published a book called Instead of Schooling, Educating for Creativity, Resilience, and Happiness. Because while schooling does offer some good training, it also covers up this innate intelligence and wisdom that we have. So what I'm going to offer to you is a way to not only creatively solve the problems you see in front of you, but to see those problems in a different way. And you do it by saying, well, who am I really? Like, am I just this separate person, this kind of meat sack carrying around this brain-like computer who has to do it all myself? Or do I have access to a more infinite intelligence that is guiding me moment by moment? So this is where my coaching has evolved to, and this is why I was working with an education nonprofit, but about 3 years ago, I decided I really wanted to focus on helping people unearth this creative power that they have. So to access this more creative thinking, as you ask yourself, well, who am I? And when I talk about this infinite intelligence, I want you to think about, how did you possibly grow from a single cell to the amazing being that you were? And that's one of the gifts that I had, being a mother of 2 daughters, is when I was pregnant with my daughters, I had this flash of insight that said, Caprice, you think you're pretty smart. You got this MBA from Carnegie Mellon. You've, done all these cool things. You would not know the first way to grow a baby. So how is it possible that there's a baby grow? Like, what is the intelligence that is growing this baby? And that was really, I guess that was in 2001. That was my first, like, whoa, there's like this intelligence that's way beyond me. And so when you look and it's the intelligence that grows your fingernails. It's the intelligence that opens roses. It's the intelligence that turns acorns into oak trees. This is kind of the intelligence that I'm talking to you about. And so how do you access this creative thinking? William Duggan recently published, I think it was just in 2020, a book called Strategic Intuition. And I love this book because he talks about 3 different types of intuition. Usually we think of intuition and it's kind of that ordinary intuition. So it's that gut instinct, it's that gut instinct that says, hey, why don't you, go this route to work today? And you end up missing kind of an accident that maybe you might have been involved in. So that's the ordinary. It's kind of a vague feeling that we often don't trust. But then he also talks about expert intuition. So expert intuition is, I know there might be more golfers on this call because of where we live, but I play tennis. So expert intuition is when I see the ball coming off my opponent's racket, I have some expert intuition of where it's going to land in my court. It's quick, it's almost instant, it's fast. But when I'm talking about accessing your creative thinking, I'm talking about what William Duggan is talking about when he says strategic intuition. It's fast, it's clear. It comes not as a vague feeling, but as a very clear thought. And this is the kind of strategic intuition, creative thinking that can guide you in knowing what you need to do with your business when you wake up in the morning, when you're going through your day. So how do you access this strategic intuition? What I would invite you to do, because I don't really do a lot of strategies and techniques with my coaching clients, but we usually will work together for more like 3 to 6 months so this can develop. And I've only got an hour with all of you today. So I'm going to offer a strategy that you can play with. And what I would invite you to do is create kind of a morning ritual. So instead of getting up in the morning and, checking your inbox, rushing in to do the tasks at hand, carve out 10, 15 minutes to relax and get into a reflective, open state. And it might be difficult. You might wake up and your first waking thought is fearful or stress or, oh my gosh, I have more to do today than I could possibly do. So my favorite relaxation technique is a breathing technique that I use to activate the vagus nerve, which is the big nerve that runs the course of your, body. And the best way to, and I learned this actually in a self-defense course, interestingly enough, but the best way to activate this vagus nerve is you take in a breath to the count of 5 slowly, and then you breathe out more deeply to the count of 7, and then you hold your breath for 3 seconds. And as you do this, you can actually feel your vagus nerve being activated. For me, it feels kind of like a tingling sensation. And you can do this 3 times, 10 times, whatever you feel you need. But at some point, your body is just going to kick in and relax. and you'll just be a little more relaxed. You'll be a little more open. Because the reason I'm saying be relaxed is you want to be open to insights. You want to be open to this creative thinking, this strategic intuition that is always available to you. You are not open to this intelligence when you are stressed, anxious, worried, fearful, because those are the emotions that send off a cascade of chemistry in our bodies that send us into fight, flight, or freeze. And the thing is, when you are in fight, flight, your body is so smart, it has sent all the blood to your extremities so you can run away from the bear. It does not open you up to creative, fresh insights or thinking. So if you can relax, open yourself to insights, and you're purposefully saying, you know, I want to disconnect from my expert intuition, because my expert intuition, it's kind of stored on that hard drive we were talking about in your intellect. It's already got all of the dots connected based on what you think you already know. And you're looking for some fresh insights. So you want to disconnect from your expert intuition. You want to disconnect the dots that are already connected so you can reconnect the dots in a different formation. And here's where I think it gets really interesting. I don't know if you can tell, but I am fascinated by quantum mechanics, by new science. I'm a bit of a, I'm not a scientist, but I'm always fascinated that science is discovering life works in a different way than we've kind of been taught that it works. So the HeartMath Institute has been around for, I think, since the 90s. And they have been doing some amazing research on the connection between the heart and the brain. And one thing that they have discovered is that strategic insights, like we're talking about, the strategic intuition, comes to you through your heart. And they did an experiment that is mind-blowing. So if you think I'm getting over into the woo-woo territory, I want to share this experiment that the HeartMath Institute did. So they took participants and they showed them alternating pictures. Some pictures were pictures that of, babies and nature and rainbows, ones that would elicit a positive emotional response in most people. And then they had some horrific images of people suffering and animals suffering that would just naturally make you, contract and feel fearful and sad. So what they did with these participants is they randomly alternated showing them these pictures. The funny thing is, these participants had the appropriate emotional reactions 6 seconds before they saw the picture. So they had them, hooked up to the brain and the heart and the breathing. They were tracking all of their biorhythms. 6 seconds before they saw the picture, they knew what the picture would be, not consciously, but unconsciously. So what the HeartMath Institute folks concluded is that your heart has the ability to pick up information beyond the boundaries of time and space. It's what they call non-local signals. It's what Niels Bohr and the early 1900 quantum physicists found when they, separated a molecule and found this spooky interaction at a distance. So now the HeartMath Institute is proving that. So you access this creative thinking, you access your strategic intuition by being relaxed, by being open to new possibilities, by being willing to be surprised by whatever shows up, and then by opening your heart to receive this information. And you do that, the HeartMath Institute says, by being grateful, by feeling compassion, by feeling altruistic. So as you're getting, some input from surprising places, the other thing that helps is to ask questions. And some questions that you might ask, open-ended questions, and this is kind of what I'm inviting you to do in maybe your morning ritual, is you could ask yourself, what is the most impactful thing that I can do for my customers today? You could ask, what customer needs exist for which there is no current solution? What are we not doing for our customers? If we were going to start over now, what company and offering would we build? And why are today's loyal customers still doing business with us? So those are just a couple questions, and think of your own, or if you don't know the right question, just say, what question should I be asking, and see what shows up. And the thing that I said about the expert intuition being fast, well, this strategic intuition is a bit slower. So it's not that you're sitting down expecting the answer to show up in this moment. It might show up later in the day. It might show up the next morning when you're walking your dog. You can't really control the timing, but believe me, an answer will show up. And it's going to help if you're going to be playful, because seriousness is the killer of creative thinking. So, what I was taught at Carnegie Mellon and with the 2 strategy consulting firms I work with, it was very, very serious business. And we came up with some serious business solutions. But I don't know that any of the solutions were really like earth-shattering, transformative, extremely creative. I mean, they were valid. But what I'm talking about is play. So give yourself time every day to play, whether it's golf, tennis, your dog, your kids. But being playful is one of the best ways to accelerate learning in a way that kind of is risk-free. So adults have kind of forgotten how to play, and I'm really, really inviting you to learn how to play again. So having more good days, you're going to consciously and proactively connect with the creative thinking and the strategic insights that are already there when you're plugged in. You're going to see more opportunities as they arise. You're going to be willing to seize these opportunities. And part of seizing opportunities is not being afraid of failure. Because when you see most of the really successful entrepreneurs, they go, wow, were they lucky? Or, look how easy that was. But when you dig into their stories, you will find that they failed their way to success. They failed over and over and over again until they figured it out. And so don't be afraid of testing things. Don't be afraid of failing fast. That's the basis of design thinking, is you're failing fast, you're iterating, and you're in communication with potential and current customers. So the other thing I really want to share is, how do you build stronger relationships with your current and prospective clients and customers? Well, it does come back to being heart-centered. A lot of people say you're serving, you're not selling. But this is more than just, a gimmicky slogan. It's really truly being altruistic and truly being curious. Who do I want to serve, and what do they need? And I think the biggest, where most entrepreneurs do fail, is they don't get out of the building and ask the questions. And Steve Blank, who created what has become the Lean Startup Method, has a wonderful free course on, I want to say it's Udemy, but I could be wrong, but it's called How to Build a Startup. And he walks you step by step through the customer discovery process. And it's free, and it takes about a month. And so it's all about getting out of the building, being in conversation with the people you want to serve, and asking them, what do you need? Now, Steve Jobs was like really the one person who said, well, people don't know what they need, so you create what they need. But, he was always accessing his creative thinking powers. And he was always creating what, Steve Blank has come to call the minimal viable product. So what is the simplest solution? And he didn't want the bells and the whistles. He wanted it simple. So if you're struggling with your business, look and ask the question, well, who are my loyal customers and why are they still loyal? If you've lost customers, reach out to them and say, well, what is going on in your world? What do you need? How could I serve you? And be very, very curious, and don't do it from a sales point of view. Do it from the, an altruistic, how can I help? How can I be of service? Ask lots of good questions. Because as I said, and when I started this webinar, now is not the time to adapt to the situation that we see. Now is the time to be hopeful, to know that we can create solutions when we see the problems in a different light. And so it's about unleashing that creativity and knowing that we have the opportunity to create a new world, one that our kids and our grandkids want to live in, and we can do it through entrepreneurship. So I've covered a lot of ground, and I know that it's probably helpful that they recorded, but I didn't want this whole hour to be me speaking. I really wanted to be able to dig in maybe to some, specific situations that you're facing, and see if we can, work through some of these things, or maybe if something wasn't clear. So I think at this point, I will open it up to any questions. And I don't know if there's a way to people put it in the chat. Do they raise their hand?
Yep. So if anyone has any questions, if you want to put it in the chat, and then we can call on you just to make sure we're not all talking over each other. The first question that I have says, how do you know when you are opening the door of play to the right people?
How do you know if you're opening the door of play to the right people?
Yes.
I wonder if whoever asked that could come on and be a little more specific about what they're asking.
I'll probably send it to me private. Here, I'll shoot them for clarification if they don't want to answer here, but I'll go to the next one. It says, intuition, how do you recognize and use it when you feel like you have imposter syndrome?
This is one of my favorite things. So I got very curious about imposter syndrome when I read that, like, Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, said that she has it. And there were, famous actors that said they always, every time they got a role, they go, well, I don't deserve this. People are going to know I'm not this good. And it seems like imposter syndrome shows up when people are achieving great things. And the reason that so many of us suffer from imposter syndrome is because we don't understand who we are. And we think that we are these just separate beings who are not connected to something greater. And we feel like it's all on us. But as I said, when you're connected, when you're plugging yourself into that infinite intelligence, you're letting it flow through you. You're letting it happen. You're allowing it to happen. It's not like it's all on you, that responsibility. But we spend the great majority of our lives creating a self-image that we then have to live up to. And it's all like an illusion. And I'm not saying that you don't, show up to the meeting looking professional, putting on some makeup, giving people confidence that you're the person that can do the work. But you have to understand that it's like you're putting on a costume. Like when you think of little kids, playing Halloween, they put on costumes, but they don't fool themselves into thinking that they are that Halloween character. So when you can connect to the deeper place where you operate from, and this gets a little deeper, sometimes I don't do this in like a first coaching session with people, but what I have come to understand for myself is that I am this impersonal awareness in which thinking, feeling, sensations arise. And I remember being like 4 or 5 years old and looking out into the world and perceiving the world. And I looked so much different then, and the world looked different. But that being that still looks out and perceives and kind of in that perception creates the world is that being that I'm talking about. It's not me, Caprice, 53, female, white, like all of those things that you identify yourself with. Because when you're trying to secure that unsecurable, persona, personality, image, it is a losing game. We all wake up every morning and have those mornings where we were like, yes, I am on fire. I got this. I'm doing great. I'm on top of the world. And then we all have those days where it's like, really, like I got out of bed for this. And that's why, I'm saying have more good days. Well, you have more good days when you realize that you are so much greater than you think you are, not from a self-image, not from a personality, but from your creative power. So how do you access intuition when you feel imposter syndrome? When you feel imposter syndrome, you realize that is negative thinking that I am believing. And the game here is not to control your thinking. I know that there's a lot of self-help gurus out there that are like positive thinking, but that's not the game, because what I'm saying is you're like this ball of bright, creative light, right? And then what we do is, because nobody told us that, because they told us, oh, you're the kid that isn't good in PE, or you're not good at math, or you'll never go to college. Like, people give you so many negative things that you put on top of this ball of light, right? And so slowly you forget that you're this blazing ball of light, because you covered it up with so much garbage thinking and opinions. And we all do it. So what do? Then we try to make this ball pretty. So we'll put on, pretty paint on top of it and sparkles. And this is what we show the world. But the thing is, that's not it either. That's where then the imposter syndrome comes on, because you're like, well, I'm not all that. I'm not and we have so many people that, hit YouTube and tell us, oh, if you only do this, you're going to get customers, and it's all about manipulation and control. But if we can actually just say, okay, I'm going to let that go, all of that pretty paint and that sparkle, because I know that all of these negative beliefs I put on this ball of light aren't true either. And if you can tap into that essence of who you really are, which is this amazing being, your natural state of being is love and unconditional acceptance and creativity and wisdom and peace of mind. When you can tap into that, then you see, well, imposter syndrome isn't even real. It's an illusion. And you are able to, from that place, get the strategic intuition that you need. So that was, I guess, okay, someone says, observation. Changing my morning routine definitely helps start the day on a lighter and less hurried note, and beginning with a mantra. I love that. And I love Ken shared, and thank you, that was from Melissa, and Ken shared, you can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a year of conversation from Plato. So that is wonderful too. Thank you.
Beautiful. And that was a wonderful explanation. I don't think I've ever had anyone approach imposter syndrome that way. So great question and amazing answer. Thank you, Caprice. Another one we had, and it kind of, I think it tied into the imposter syndrome a little bit, is talking about being positive is, people say that you are the sum of the 5 people you spend your time with. How do you edit those people so that you can get away from the negativity?
Yeah.
I think that was the adjustment to the opening the door to the right people. So I'm guessing that this person has some people that maybe they need to not spend as much time with.
Yeah. So, this is a really interesting question, because once you realize that you are living 100% in the experience of your thinking. So I'm going to take a little detour in answering this question, but this is very, I think, helpful too, is when I first went through my coaching training in 2000, it was with the Newfield Network. And a lot of their focus was, you're living in the story you've created about your own life. If you can change that story, you can accomplish anything. And that was helpful to a point. But what I've come to realize in the past few years is that you're living in the experience of your thinking 100% of the time, but you have been trained in this outside in understanding of life. So for instance, you have an experience, and you think that that experience is creating your emotional response. But what happens is a little bit different. So something happens, you have an energetic response, it creates a feeling, and then what you do is you project that onto the outside world. I mean, and it's a little tricky because then there's this separation. But when you realize that you're living 100% in the experience of your thinking, not in your experience of the outside world, like I can't experience that tree outside my window unless I think, oh, there's a tree. I can't experience the pain of stubbing my big toe until I go, oh, it's a thought. The pain is a thought. Like everything is kind of a thought. So, so here's an example. If you're driving down the street and somebody cuts you off, right? You can interpret that in so many different ways. You can be like, wow, I hope they drive more, carefully so they don't get injured. You can think, what a jerk, who would do that to me? Or maybe if you knew that in that car, they're racing to get to the hospital because a woman's about to have a baby, you're going to have different thinking about that situation. So you can't necessarily blame someone cutting you off for your experience. It's what you think about that experience that creates it. I don't know if that makes any sense. But so then when you're around other people, you have to realize that there are 7.8 billion different interpretations of reality on this planet. So you can never really get into the mind of another person, but you know that if they're coming at you with some negativity, it's because of their negative thinking. It really has nothing to do with you. Now, if they don't have that awareness, if they are so seduced by their thinking that they think their thinking is reality, you've got a couple choices. You can try and wake them up to the fact that they're, playing the blame game when they're really creating their own reality with their thinking. And if they can wake up to that, then they're going to shift. But, it's not that you have to avoid people that are continually living in their negative thinking and seduced by it. Because once you see the game, you don't have to be so selective of your experiences because they don't have the same impact on you. But, at the same time, once you're aware of this, you might realize, well, those people really aren't that fun to be around. I don't really enjoy being around them. I don't have to protect myself from them, but I would probably seek to spend time with people that are operating at a different level of awareness. So also with play, who do you want to play with? You want to play with people that are lighthearted, that are playful, that are maybe not so serious, so, doom and gloom. But your intuition will also, give you a lot of information about people in your environment. And there are some toxic people, and it's not that, I shouldn't say they're toxic, their behavior is toxic. They've estimated that 1% of the population are psychopaths, meaning they operated with a very low level of empathy and compassion. And especially in the business world, they've seen that 4% of business executives have pathological psychopathic behavior. So I'm not saying be aware that some people see the world in a very distorted way because their thinking is very distorted and they're not aware of it.
Well put. Another question, what is your favorite book, or what book would you recommend that we read next?
Oh my goodness, there are so many of my favorite books. I'm going to say that right now I'm rereading for the 4th or 5th time. It's called Discover the Power Within, and it's written by Eric Butterworth, who was a Unity minister. So it's definitely comes from it's rather biblical. So if you're not comfortable with that, there's also a great book by Jeff Foster called, it's called like the unconditional acceptance, I think. But he's written some great books. Jeff Foster, who comes at it from not quite, and I'm not saying that, I mean, I guess because Eric Butterworth was a Unity minister, it's just a little more religious, but those are two of my favorite books because they're pointing you in the direction that I'm kind of also pointing you, which is that you have this capacity within you to really create the life that you want.
Morning rituals. What is the first thing you do in your morning ritual each morning?
Well, it's before I even get out of bed. I mean, I too have a very, active brain, and it can immediately go to what am I going to do? Or it can even fall into the habit of worry. And so the first thing I do is just notice, wow, my thinking is already like the train has already left the station. And I take a moment of just appreciating that I'm alive, I think is really the first thing that I do. And so that's before I even get out of bed. I like to do some really stretching exercises. As I get older, I need to continually move. And then my favorite thing is I will go outside with a cup of coffee and just be, just see what shows up for me. And sometimes I will ask questions, but a lot of times I'll just enjoy the morning. I love just listening to the birds. It's just my, my check-in with life. And that's kind of my morning ritual.
Wonderful. Do we have any other questions before we wrap stuff up? Hey, well, I'll keep an eye out on the chat just to see if we have any more questions, but we do want to remind everyone, I did see that there is a good amount of people that are not members of the Don Ryan Center yet, and we have a lot of these wonderful events that we've been doing virtually, and we've been doing them for free for members and non-members. But we do encourage you to join the Don Ryan Center membership. It is free. You join, you get a free year of membership, and it will not be free forever, and neither will these events. So we definitely recommend you do that. I'm going to shoot out the link that you can go to sign up. Super easy, and then you will get to be a part of the Don Ryan Center membership. So definitely do that. Caprice, any other thoughts, closing words?
Well, I hope that this was useful, and as you think about what we've talked about, you're going to have your own insights, and you're really looking for a feeling. It's a light feeling. And I guess the other thing that it really helps guide me through my days is when I start feeling really heavy, really contracted, I know that I'm just kind of heading in the wrong direction with my thinking. And it's not then, oh, I have to think positive thoughts. It's just, we'll pause, just take a moment and pause, because the system will correct itself. You will have fresh insights, and truth always feels light and expansive, and it never feels fearful. So yeah, pause was your word, Melissa. That's great. I mean, the power of the pause. So always give yourself permission to just take a moment to let the system kind of right itself, and you will get fresh insights. And so, it's been a real honor and privilege to be with everyone today. And I did want to mention that I am launching a group coaching experience that's going to start this coming Sunday, and I'm calling it Deep Rest. And so it's for anyone who is feeling exhausted, stressed, overwhelmed during these times. And by being able to capture that natural state of deep rest, you will also be able to access, solutions to whatever you're facing. So I would invite you to check that out if it's of interest.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Caprice. This was incredibly beneficial, I think, for everyone. Some great insights. I hope that everyone learned a little bit of something. I think I learned a ton. So again, thank you all for participating with us this morning. And thank you so much, Caprice, for giving us your time this morning.
Absolutely. Everyone have a magical day.
Have a good one, everyone.